Hi guys, welcome to Crazy Burger. In this video we're going to be playing through all 11 games announced as part of Indie Heroes Collection 4 coming to Evercade in February 2025. That includes the two new games that were not part of Indie Heroes Game of the Month throughout 2024. Now stay tuned to the end of the video as well. I will be doing a price comparison, obviously based on the new price increase for the cartridges, and I'm going to be basing that on if you were buying these games on itch.io or Steam, and the results are pretty surprising, so stay tuned for that at the end of the video. Anyway, without further ado, let's get stuck into those games. Okay, first up, it's going to be Starseed. This is one of the newer games from Thalamus. It's a Game Boy Color game, and it's a sort of a shoot 'em up of sorts. You can buy this for $1 on itch.io if you're interested in having a quick bash at it. I say it's a shoot 'em up of sorts. Basically, it's a game played in small sections. It stops, you take out all the enemies that appear on screen, and then you sort of move on to the next stage, or basically it scrolls up to the next level until you've completed that stage in full. It's not bad, it's nothing spectacular, it is very basic, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It's just nothing amazing. I don't think it's one of those games you're going to be playing an awful lot of, maybe in short bursts, but I couldn't really fault it too much. It wasn't terrible, it was definitely playable and fun just for that short period that I played it. It's not too bad. So next up, it's also from Thalamus. This is another game we didn't get as part of Game of the Month. This is Droppin, and it's another Game Boy Color game, and there's two different modes you can play. You can play a quick arcade game, or you can play the puzzle mode. Basically in the puzzle mode, you can see down the right hand side, you've got a certain amount of blocks that you need to sort of disappear from the screen, or sort of collate by sort of collecting either 3 or more colours by matching them up. It's pretty straightforward, but it is one of those games that's very addictive, and I actually really enjoyed playing this. It did remind me a lot of playing maybe a mix between Columns and maybe like Bejeweled. I'm pretty sure there's plenty other examples before that you could think of that it's probably similar to, but it's really good. Very basic, but I absolutely enjoyed it. I can see this game being quite popular, especially on the EXP, and maybe as part of like high score challenges and trying to sort of get a really good score, especially in the arcade mode. Now, we're playing the puzzle mode at present, and that it kind of gets deceivingly hard. You sort of get lulled into a false sense of securities early on, thinking, oh, this is quite easy, and then I got hit quite hard when I got to like the second or third stage. I thought, oh, I've actually run out of moves, because you kind of forget and start just matching up any colour. You really have to match up the colours you see on the screen. But I have to say, I really enjoyed this one. Okay, so the first thing that definitely strikes you is that it's a very nice looking game. Graphics are really cool, the music's nice, the sound effects are great. Great design overall, there's no doubt about that. But there's a few things that sort of annoy me about the game, and we'll go into some of those in some detail as I play through. Now, there's a lot of collectibles in the game. You see the sort of teddy bears, I'm sure there's a lot of collectibles. You can see there was an issue there with the bad guy just disappeared into thin air. It's obviously got a few bugs here and there. Now, it's not major. If you go back, you see it reappears again. So you could probably explain that away with some kind of game feature, I'm sure. But there's certainly some things about the game that are not perfect at all. I felt the sort of collision detection wasn't particularly great either. At times, it was very frustrating. The game does remind me a lot of Ira the Crow Maiden in many ways. It's like a cross between that and Tinhead. Tinhead because of the frustration that kicks in with the nature, but you jump to a platform and all of a sudden one of the enemies jumps straight to you, and there's really no avoiding like taking a life hit or even dying completely, which is really, really frustrating. And I felt like sometimes the collision detection was all over the place. But okay, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy it to a point, but it's just pretty frustrating. So my tip here would really to take your time when you're playing it. And probably use those save states and use them often. Otherwise you'll probably get really frustrated and die. And the most frustrating part here is you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the level again, which really does annoy. So next up we're going to be looking at Block'em Sock'em. This is a game from the YouTuber John Hancock. You start off with a star block, which basically means you can touch any other block and then it will change colour depending on what last block it actually touched, and then that will obviously change the block as well. So if you're throwing the purple upwards and then it hits the red block, it will change that one to the purple and so forth. So the idea, you can see in the top right hand corner of the screen, you've got a goal. You need to get at least a minimum of 4 left before you can move on to the next stage. And then the next box down you see left, you've got now 7 boxes, and then the one below that you've got how many tosses you have left. Yes please, no sniggering in the back. So you obviously have a minimum amount of tosses per level. Yes, please stop sniggering, maybe it's just me, I don't know. Anyway, so the game itself is actually pretty good fun. I did enjoy it. Again, just to say, if you don't like your puzzle games, you'll probably not enjoy this, but obviously a little word of warning, I did experience a few bugs here and there, but obviously the idea is to try and clear as many blocks from the screen and reach that goal and then move on to the next level. You don't actually need to clear all the blocks on the level. As long as you get to that goal, you can then move on. It certainly gets a little bit tricky, and sometimes I'm not really sure it makes entire sense, but for what's there, I actually really enjoy it. So next up we've got Nyghtmare, and this one is very aptly named because it is an absolute nightmare to play through. Very frustrating. It's Nyghtmare the Ninth King, and it's a sort of Castlevania inspired style game. I think this is also a Game Boy Color game if I recall. I'm sure some people enjoy it, but I got really frustrated and annoyed with the controls while playing through this game. Okay, once you've chosen your character, you obviously get started on your Nyghtmare adventure. There are these orbs that you can see here that you collect on each level. Some are hidden. I think there's one per each stage. I'm not sure if you get a different ending depending on how many you collect or if you miss any. This is a health point or a checkpoint, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously try and destroy the lanterns as well, because you get a projectile that adds to your second weapon count. And you press the select button to fire that projectile out to try and destroy the enemies from afar, which is definitely very handy later on in the game. The basic sort of manoeuvres are jump, and you've got a sort of whip which you can use to destroy the enemies. And that's basically it. The whip does come in handy for a lot of jump mechanisms later in the game, which are pretty frustrating. The toughest part of the game is probably those jumping parts, and the boss levels can be really tedious to go through. So next up, it's Jane Austen's 8-Bit Adventure. Now, I have to be honest, when Blaze introduced this to me back in July, I thought it was some sort of joke. I didn't really think they were being serious at all. Based on that name of the game, it's not really very enticing unless you're a Jane Austen fan. And obviously, I'm not really a Jane Austen fan at all. But forget the name. Enjoy the game, because the platforming nature of the game is actually pretty good fun to play through. It is pretty basic. I think it's based on the NES Maker sort of programming sort of suite, and it is basic, but it is good fun enough to play through. The idea of the game, I think, is some of the novels have been stolen, or pages from the novel have been stolen. You need to basically go and find them, and then you take on the boss at each end of each stage, and then you move on to the next level. It is kind of simple. Quite basic platform, but for what it is actually fun enough to play, and I did enjoy it for what it is. I got over the name of the game and just enjoyed it for what it is. It's not bad at all. Next up, it's Collie Defense, which is a sort of tower defense style game. Okay, so we start off in story mode, and it starts off pretty straightforward. Press the A or X button, I can't remember what one it is, and it will bring up the menu of what tower defences you have on offer, and then press the B button to place them down, or A button, I can't remember the controls, to place them down strategically to make sure that none of the enemies get through to the end of the pathways. If they do get through to the end, you will lose part of your life, hearts at the top of the screen there. If you manage to actually kill some of the foxes, bears, whatever else comes across, you will get some money back, depending on how strong the sort of animal is. I think the foxes you get about $5 back to your sort of shop account. If it's bears, it's maybe $15. So it's all about strategy and trying to stop those animals from getting through. The first few levels are pretty straightforward, so you need to keep an eye on your hearts, keep an eye on obviously the defences that you're placing down. Well, you need a little bit more, and that's it. So if you've played sort of tower defence games before, you'll be right at home. If you haven't, then it's really one of those games you're either going to love or hate it and maybe not really see what the fuss is about. Personally, I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I like what they've done here. I think it is pretty cool. And again, it is probably the first tower defense game on Evercade, so it is pretty unique for this platform, which is pretty cool. And my son absolutely loves playing these games. He's a massive fan of Bloons TD and Plants vs Zombie. So he played through this gameplay for me, which is probably quite noticeable because we get quite far into the game. The saddest thing about this is probably there is only 12 levels, and it is pretty basic for a tower defense game. You can't actually sell on the units. Once you've placed them down, that's that. You can't just cancel it, maybe get your money back. You can't change the targeting of the tower defences either. But there's certainly some variety there. There's different sort of tower defences as you go through the game. The enemies get faster as they come onto the screen. It gets a little bit more complicated. You obviously have to keep an eye on your strategy, how much you're spending. So there is that. It is pretty cool for what it is, and as we said, it is one of the first, or if not the first, game of its type on Evercade. And I'm sure, I think if you do love these type of games, you are going to be in your element. Next up, it's Soko Banana. This is one I really enjoyed. So definitely I think Soko Banana is one of the better games for Indie Heroes 4 so far. Definitely remind me a little bit like Big Too Small, maybe even a little bit like Roneo's Tale, just maybe with the music. And the fact that you probably need to stop and look at the level before you move anything, just to try and fathom out what you're supposed to do in the right move. Now there's no time limit, so you can take all the time in the world if you like. Unfortunately, there's no rewind function, so if you do make a mistake, you have to press the select button to start all over again. And there's no doubt some of these levels are very, very tricky. But if you love your puzzle games, you're going to absolutely love this game. Graphically, that's pretty basic, pretty simple, some nice tunes throughout it, but I don't think this type of game does need any fancy graphics to be successful. I think it's all about the puzzle element and trying to enjoy that. Just like Big Too Small, very addictive stuff. I definitely enjoy this game. So Flea 2 starts off fairly familiar if you've played the first game. Use the A button to talk to the different characters that you meet, and you need to collect those blood sort of vials and trade them in, and you'll get more lives, and you will definitely need more lives as you go through the game. And thankfully there are plenty of lives on offer, which for sure you definitely need them, but one thing I definitely need to stress here, you need to use the save states and use them often. Not sure how people managed on original hardware playing these games because they are unbelievably tough. Now you've got the B button, if you mash that quite quickly you'll do small jumps, and then if you press the directional arrow to the right or left and press the A button you will do a dash. Now throughout the game you probably have to do a combination of all of these, and at the end of the game or near the last 20 levels you get the moon ability jump, which basically you can jump a little bit higher. You're in a kind of a bubble type thing. In some of the levels you have to do a combination of all three, which means it's very, very tough. Now there's no doubt this is a cool game, it is very addictive, but it's probably so frustrating. I think there's a lot of people probably not want to play or just give up, maybe even up to the first boss level. I definitely felt getting a little bit frustrated. I probably swore more often than I have recently on playing any of these games, and is that a good sign? Probably not when you've got kids, but what can you do? It is a cool game, but frustrating, difficult, annoying, good. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. The fact I suppose I just kept on playing it, maybe it's better than I gave it credit for. It has that addictive sort of quality that does keep dragging you back. But it is a tough, frustrating game. It almost feels like you're playing the Demon Souls version of Flea. It really is that bad at times. So around every 10th level you'll have a boss sort of fight, so to speak. Basically you're just fleeing, bad pun, you're fleeing from the mosquitoes or the boss, or you're trying to guide different fleas to the exit, that type of thing. But these levels are really tough. I mean, you thought the main sort of levels are tough, the boss levels take on a whole different challenge. Although I would have to stress, make sure you try and save when there is respite throughout the level, and maybe save maybe in the middle. Create yourself a save state, then you can maybe jump back to that, rather than going all the way back to the beginning of the level when you actually die. Personally, it would have been nice if there was some sort of in-game mid-level save on these, because without that, they're really tough. It's just trial and error till you actually manage to get lucky and complete the level. So next up, it's Batty Zabella. This is a fairly newish game from 2022, and it was a Game Boy point and click game that we got as part of Game of the Month in November. It's a little bit saucy here and there, but it's nothing too severe. It's nothing that your kids wouldn't be fine playing, for example. But yeah, there's a little bit of a saucy nature going on in the game. But yeah, basically point to everything with the B button, click on everything, listen to or read those clues, and you can see at the bottom of the screen you can also turn around and get a different viewpoint to that room. But yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. I think it's pretty good. So finally, and last up, we have Murtop, which is probably the best game on the collection. This is a fantastic arcade-style game, a lot like, I guess, like Donut Dodo. It's a cross between Dig Dug and like Bomberman, and it is absolutely excellent. There's no doubt about it. It's very, very addictive. Okay, so my overall thoughts of Indie Heroes Collection 4. I think, to be honest, there's probably only 2 or 3 games that I would buy this collection for. The Curse of Illmoore Bay was pretty frustrating to play through. It's a standard, fairly average platformer. Block'em Sock'em was good, but very flawed. Nyghtmare the Ninth King, I did not enjoy playing that. That was a frustrating game to play. Jane Austen's was actually okay. That's a decent enough platformer. Collie Defense, it's okay, but you're not going to spend an awful lot of time on that. It is very basic, not a lot to it. Flea 2 is good, but one of the most frustratingly difficult games you'll ever play, probably on Evercade. Batty Zabella was a point and click game, was okay, that was not too bad. The other game, Soko Banana, I really enjoyed Soko Banana, and I'm looking forward to playing that one more. That's probably one of the games I would choose to buy this collection for. Starseed, the new sort of game from Thalamus, is okay. It's not great, it's okay. I would probably choose Block Droppin as the other game to probably buy this collection for. I think it's fantastic and very, very addictive stuff. But probably the main game that you would want to buy this is probably Murtop. There's no doubt about it. This is the best game on the collection. A fantastic arcade style game, and I think apparently there's hundreds of levels. They just keep on going on and on, but it's very, very addictive. There's a high score sort of challenge you can do as well, and sort of upload your score to an online sort of database. But no doubt, if you're going to buy this collection, it's probably for 1 or 2 games only. For me, it might be overall one of the least of my favourite of the Indie Heroes collections. I think it's definitely probably 4th out of the 4. But still, there's a couple of games there that you probably don't want to miss. Overall, probably not the greatest cart ever, but just for one of those 2 games, it's probably just about worth buying. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm going to do a price comparison now, just to sort of highlight to you, is this actually good value for money or not? Now let's have a look at the details. Okay guys, so I've made this table just basically comparing the cheapest possible price I could find on itch.io and or Steam, and you can see that in the column I've created here. Now this doesn't include games that might have been in the sale, so you could have easily picked these games up cheaper throughout Christmas, but these are the current standard prices that you would pay if you want to purchase the digital version on those platforms. There is some physical prices there. I only found 3. I thought I gave up after that because you can see the point that the physical prices are generally around about £25 to £40 or dollars. But anyway, looking at that, the Curse of Illmoore Bay would cost you £11.39 on Steam, which is pretty pricey, I think, for the game that it is. Block'em Sock'em is £4.46. That seems quite pricey as well. That's on itch.io. We've got Nyghtmare the Ninth King, that is also on itch.io for £5.39. That seems way overpriced for me. The Jane Austen's 8-Bit Adventure, £8.09. That's pretty pricey. You'll find that on itch.io for that price. Collie Defense is actually the one and only game on here that is free. It is entirely free if you want to sort of play that. It's on itch.io. It's not really a huge game, so I can see why it wouldn't really sell for too much. But Flea 2 is £4.99 on Steam. Now that's probably the Steam version or the PC sort of style version. The NES version is a little bit more on itch.io, which is around about £8 if I recall. Batty Zabella is the Game Boy game from £5.39 on itch.io. Murtop, the native sort of game, you can find the same game on Steam for £4.29, which is actually good value for money. We've got Soko Banana, that seems quite pricey, but there is a big game there, that is £7.28. You'll find that on itch.io. And the last 2 games, Starseed and Block Droppin from the Thalamus publisher, is about $1 minimum, which I've converted to 97 pence. That's what came off my bank account, which totals up to £53.23, which means you would save yourself £33.24 if you purchase the Evercade version at £19.99, which actually surprised me. I didn't expect it to be as much as that. I think if you're only really liking one or two games here, you might actually be better off though purchasing the games that you like rather than purchasing the Evercade cart. For example, maybe you only like Soko Banana and Murtop and maybe Flea 2. That would probably amount to about 15 quid or more. But I guess looking at this, it just shows you that the Evercade cart is actually pretty good value in this occasion. If you wanted to purchase actual physical carts on the Mega Drive, NES, for example, you can see there the prices are so much more. Although I don't really like to do that comparison of physical sort of carts for the actual systems themselves. I don't really think that's a fair comparison to Evercade. I know Blaze like to do it, but I just don't see it's a fair sort of reflection. I'd rather sometimes look at the digital versions that you could maybe play in some other devices. But I guess on this occasion, the Evercade cart is good value, which I guess did actually surprise me somewhat. I thought it would probably come in roughly about the same or even better just purchasing these games on their own. Now, I don't think this will always be the case. I don't think the Evercade price will always be good value. There's some examples out there that you might be better off looking elsewhere. For example, the Tomb Raider collection, you'd probably be able to pick that up for cheaper, and you would probably even get better versions. You can switch between native and the sort of new remastered versions. Also, maybe stuff like Morcat collection, you can pick up those games fairly cheaply on itch.io and probably save yourself a fortune rather than spending £20 on an Evercade cart. Now, it's going to swing and roundabouts, there's no doubt about it, and it's something I'm going to keep my eye on throughout the year, because there's no doubt sometimes the Evercade price doesn't really match up. So hopefully it is something Blaze are aware of and they'll try and provide good value for those increased prices, because no doubt people might look at this and might want to go elsewhere, which isn't what Blaze really want, I guess, at the end of the day. But anyway, I thought this was a worthwhile sort of thing to do and basically keep eye on those prices. I think I was curious myself. Hopefully it makes good reading for you guys as well. It's nice to see we're actually making a saving by getting the Evercade version here. Anyway guys, thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you again in the next one. Bye for now.